Hi guys, this is our ninth um, government support seminar, just to update and round up questions by us at Naylor Accountancy. Just a quick hello, and it's Happy Cheese Day. It's Cheese Day, which is a bit odd, and Jolina Jolie's birthday. And last week it was Mark's daughter's birthday, and we've got to mention that. So happy birthday, belated birthday to your daughter, Mark. So there has been a lot of changes. A lot came through last Friday. Steve's been busy. I think you put to press on Friday, Steve. So he was doing that on Friday. So I'm very pleased that he managed to do that. But I think it's very helpful for us all just to see those. So thank you, Steve. And he's been updating it as well, because what happens is you get all this guidance coming out, the things coming out. There's no real guidance. Then you look at the guidance. There's still we don't find out everything until I think it's July the 12th or something like that. I can't remember the exact date when we know more detail of actual what's happening on certain things. But we have a very good idea of what's going to be going on. And it's interesting because the way they've done it is obviously to try and get people off the furlough and also get people back to work, which is great. And they've actually done an amazing job with what they're giving us. One thing that is going to come up more and more, and I'm already having some conversations with clients on that and some of you guys, and that is you're going to have to start thinking of, are you wanting people back to work, or are you wanting to make them redundant? Now that's a different story, but people are probably wanting to start looking at that by, in August, if you are going down that route, because it's going to be costing you as an employer more on that side. Which is a sad state of affairs. But if you are looking at your costs and you know what your business is like going forward, you maybe need to look at that. So what I'm going to do is share my screen again, and I'm going to just go through just a very brief overview of what, oops, sorry, I think I've shared the wrong one. Bear with me 1 second. I'm trying to share my actual screen slideshow. There we go. So it's a bit better looking for you guys. So what's new? We've actually got the version 2 of the CJRS, or the coronavirus job retention scheme, which is furlough, and it's the Flexi-Furlough. What effectively that means is from the 1st of July, you can have people working flexibly and also claiming furlough. And you can do it by the hours. So if somebody works 40 hours a week, you can even do it on the number of hours they work. But I would suggest days, just because it gets very complicated. And then the days that they don't work, you furlough. However, you will be paying the full salary for those days they do work, and the NI on top of that. So that's the main thing on the Flexi Furlough that's going to happen. The only thing is, which Steve will probably go into a bit more detail on, is that you can't furlough anybody from the 1st of July unless they've actually been on furlough prior to that. Now, there is the date of the 10th of June. So if you haven't been furloughed by the 10th of June, you then will not be able to be furloughed going forward. So if you have somebody that you haven't furloughed yet and you're wanting to furlough them for June, let us know straight away. We have one of you that needs to do that, Neil. So we will definitely be doing them straight away before the 10th, just to make sure that they can carry on after that if that's required. The other thing is that you could, before, spread months over. So you could do 2 months furlough claim in, say, May for, or 3 months, for April and May, or March, April, May. You won't be able to do that from July. You'll only be able to do that month. We have really tried to only do the month. So we maybe did a catch up and then just do a month, just to make it simpler for everybody anyway. So we have sort of tried to be in that sort of scheme already. So the next thing is just how much is the furlough going to be? It's actually not as bad as we had all thought, because we thought it would be going down to 40% that the employer would have to pay at the end, and it's not. So it's still till the end of October. The difference is it's going to go down, incrementally. So August remains 80% that they will pay of the salary. That's through the CJRS, the furloughing scheme. That's the government. However, you will be paying the employer NI and the pension from August onwards. So that will be free in August, September, and October. Effectively, that's a 5% cost to the employer. So it's a 5% of the furloughing amount. So 75% of the whole furlough amount is being taken up by the government still. I mean, it is 80%, but because you're still having to pay employer NI, it's the 5% cost to you. Then from September, the furlough is going to go down to 70%. So the government, you will get 70% from the government of the salary, and you as an employer will pay 10% of the salary, making up to the 80%. So throughout this, the employee still gets 80% salary all the way through October. This is effectively a 14% cost to you as the employer. Then when it goes to October, it lowers again to 60% paid by the government through furloughing scheme, SGRS. And you will have to pay 20% as an employer. What that means is they're still getting 80%, but it effectively gives a cost of around 20% to you as an employer. So it goes up. So that's why they're sort of saying, people are saying, and it is happening already, people are contemplating redundancies. If you think that job is redundant going forward, you would need to start looking at that potentially within this furloughing period. I'm not a lawyer, employment lawyer at all, and you would need to seek advice, but I have been hearing that you can do this during the furlough period, start doing redundancy processes, but you would need to seek an employment lawyer or a HR expert on that. We can point you in directions there if you need it. So those are the main things that I wanted to bring up. I will let Steve probably talk about that SEIS on the self-employed schemes, that there has been an extension there as well, but he will be able to give you more detail on that as well. So it is still good news. There is still good support, still better than we thought it would be. And we will be sort of going through that furloughing as we go through each month. So July is normal, although you still get 80%, you still get the pension and NI contributions from the furloughing scheme from the government, but you will be able to let the person work and have them working for you. If you have got work for them and you want them to work, they should be working for you unless they've got a very good reason or they need to self-isolate. So they can't refuse you working theoretically, but again, you need to see an employment lawyer or HR specialist on that. Well, that's what I've been reading and hearing from barristers and employment barristers and stuff as well. But I'm no expert, okay? So I am now going to stop sharing this screen. And if you've got any questions, please do put them in, because I would expect quite a few on this. So Steve, do you want to add anything to any of that? You're quite dark there, Steve.
I suppose because it's actually started clouding over since we started here, so it is getting progressively darker over my end. The one thing I just wanted to add was about that the 10th of June date. Basically, that's the latest you could start furloughing someone who has not been furloughed already, as long as all your employees have been furloughed for at least 3 weeks before 30th of June, you're fine. They don't need to be furloughed from 10th of June to 30th of June. That 10th of June cut-off date is just the latest you can furlough someone for the first time and have them still qualify for the scheme from 1st of July onwards. We're in a very peculiar situation here. Normally, with tax law like this, the legislation is published first and then the guidance is published afterwards. And the guidance is generally written in a way that is supposed to be easier for the layman to interpret, but as a result, sometimes it's not entirely clear on the detail. Unfortunately, we're the other way around here. The guidance is being published first, and some of that is open to a bit of interpretation. The legislation is due to be published on the 12th of June, all things being well, so we should have the fine detail there. But the key thing at the moment is if you've got anybody that you haven't furloughed at all yet, and you want to be able to furlough them from July onwards, you have to get them in furlough before 10th of June, otherwise they will not qualify. But yeah, otherwise everything else I think has been covered on the furlough scheme there.
Cool. And on the SCIS scheme, the question there we have sort of from sole traders is, how is that operating now? Should they've got all their money, and also how is it being extended?
Right, the original SCIS scheme effectively covered 3 months of average profits. It's supposed to cover March, April, May. The claims for that opened mid-May. We weren't allowed to make those claims on behalf of clients. They had to make them through their own government gateway account. But I think most people that are eligible have already done that. At the same time as making the new extended furlough scheme announcement, Rishi Sunak announced a second wave of the self-employment scheme, which is effectively covering another 3 months profits, June, July, August, in a similar way to the reduction in the job retention scheme. The reclaim this time is 70% of the average profits. It was 80% for the first grant on that. The first grant, new applications for that will close on the 13th of July. So if you know any self-employed individuals who haven't applied already, they need to get on that now, because that will literally stop 13th of July. The claims for the second grant are expected to be available from August. It's possible that might happen earlier, because it did happen earlier for the first grant, but August is the projected date at the moment. The other important thing is you don't have to have applied for the first grant to be eligible for the second grant. The overall eligibility criteria that you've operating self-employment in the 18-19 tax year or earlier, your tax returns are all up to date, your profits are below 50,000 and they make up more than half of your income. All of those eligibility criteria still apply, but it's possible someone in the early months of the scheme, they still had work. I might have been tailing off, but they still had work for those 3 months that first grant covered. And now, in the later part, they found that their business has suffered a downturn from coronavirus. They can claim that second grant as long as they meet the eligibility criteria. I suspect most self-employed people will be claiming both. In some cases, possibly there are self-employed people who have actually found their work picking up and thus won't want to claim the second one, but they're independent from one another. You can claim one, both, neither. It's entirely up to your judgment. But yeah, anybody that self-employed needs any help with that, do get in touch with us.
Cool. One thing as well is on the flexible working. So the question is, how many days can I have them working for me from July?
It's apparently entirely unrestricted. The way it essentially works is that you pay full pay for the days that they actually work, and you're not able to claim furlough reclaims for any of those days, and you have a normal furlough reclaim for the days they don't work. And this is a big change from the original scheme, where you weren't actually able to do any work at all for your employer, which whilst I suppose a sensible move from trying to prevent abuse of the scheme, has, I know, created a lot of problems for some of our clients who had some work to do, but not enough to get somebody in for full time. So yes, it seems to be flexible. You could have someone effectively working full time, and if they are effectively working full time, you just won't get any furlough from them. The one thing that we're missing on this, because the furlough grant's been calculated on calendar days rather than working days, is how the split will be calculated. between days worked in a month and furlough days, but that's something that should be, when the full legislation is released on the 12th, they should give the full calculation criteria for how that is determined. But yeah, as far as how much work, it's how much work you've got for them.
Yeah, and I think that's where the complexity comes in this flexi furlough. It is a good thing because it does mean you can get people working if you need to. Just need to be aware that that you have to keep an eye on. Well, let us know how many hours they are working, so we can actually do the correct payroll and also the correct furlough as well for them if they're going to be furloughed for the rest of that period. So that's not quite so straightforward, but it is something worth doing if you need them to sort of get things moving. Now, any other questions that anyone has? I mean, the main one is that, and then also redundancies. So I think I've covered the redundancy. Unless you have anything on redundancies, Steve, that you are aware of, if people are looking at that.
No, I mean, as you say, it is more of an employment law question. But the thing about redundancies is, I mean, you have to provide notice periods for redundancies. As a rule, the entitlements under redundancies will change the longer someone is employed. So if you know there isn't going to be a job for them after the furlough scheme, you have to be aware that if you did keep them on the furlough scheme while you were reclaiming, then they're possibly accruing more entitlements there. Yes, I mean, it's a question for an employment lawyer, but if you really know that coming out of the other side of this, there is not going to be work for people, then sad as it may be, in some cases, now is the time to be making those decisions, because the chances are, if you leave it till later, it will end up costing you more at a time when you really can't afford to have high costs.
Yeah, the big thing there, Steve sort of alluded to, is the 2 years. So if you do have somebody who's under the 2 years that you then don't want longer term, then you would want to actually make them redundant, sadly, before the 2 years are up, because otherwise they get more rights and it's more difficult to do the redundancy. Again, you'd need a HR person or employment lawyer. I do have a good HR person that we recommend people to, but it's not our sort of forte, that. And I would hate to make the rule, because it is quite a bit of a minefield there. Any other questions anyone? Because I'm not sure if there's any other issues that have been brought up that are requiring it. I know we've gone through so many over these 9 webinars we've had, and we missed the first 2 weeks of doing these, and that was about it, when we were just working out what to do to try and help everyone. So if there aren't any other issues, then I think that we actually coming to an end, unless you've got anything else, Steve. You're on mute, I'm afraid.
But there's always the possibility of further announcements. I think at the end of, unless you have a different second wave, which requires a further lockdown. But say the main challenge in the future is going to be precisely how the part-time working calculations are done. We've at least got an idea of how much the reclaims are, and can do some initial calculations on the likely costs involved as the furlough scheme tapers off. But for the most part, hopefully, we are looking at heading back to a normal working environment, as normal as it can be in the not too distant future.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is we are coming out of this. Hopefully things will go back to some normality. Things have changed for everybody. I know people looking at rental offices and stuff, and the issues there, whether they're worth having. People are also looking a lot at costs and just how efficient they are. So it is an introspective sort of time, all this. Just on a good note, in Denmark, they've been back for quite a while now. Things are sort of going better. I'm half Danish, so I watch the Danish news. This is where this is coming from. And also, they did think there was going to be a second wave. They didn't have it, and they're now rethinking how it's working going forward. So the thought there is that people now know how to sort of self-isolate as soon as they have any issues. that they may be related, and also that they that people actually sort of self distancing as well. However, who knows? So I'm hoping that we don't have that second wave as well as things move forward. But all of you, you know, I hope that's been helpful. And unless there's anything else, I'm just looking. No, there's not. There's just a bit of commentary. But sorry, that's just the commentary on the darkness in Steve.
The darkness, yes.
Which is now you're back in the light.
Yes,
very dark.
yes. That was the answer to question marks camera action lights, because I was sitting here with only just the small screen when you were sharing your screen. I was thinking, actually, I am struggling to see me now. I hope I am just about visible when I come up on screen. So fortunately, and it is lighting up a bit again now, so you can see me better. But yes, sadly, I would have to have taken the light switches all the way back there behind me for this room.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks. But thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. And I hope this is useful. And also be safe. I hope you all are. And let's hope for some normality. Take care. Bye.